My name is Jenny Crane, and I'm doing a video for my osteopathy class 1 under Tom Mays for integrated equine therapies. I'm very pleased to be doing this video. I go into my next osteopathy class in a couple weeks, so I'm looking forward to that as well and learning more about osteopathy and, of course, body work. So first I should take a quick introduction here. This is Jules. At least this is the back end of Jules. She is a mare and she's approximately 12 to 15 years old. She's very much a sweetheart. She's agreed to stand here for a while as I lecture the first part of this video. To start out with, I want to talk about Tom Mays' classes with integrated equine therapies. The first set of classes are the foundational classes where we learn a lot about acupressure as well as some bone movement, but very light bone movement. And then the second set of classes is actually craniosacral therapy. And finally the last set is osteopathy. And I could say from my own part as well as many others in the classes that Tom teaches that we're very excited about his osteopathy series. In his first osteopathy class, I want to make it clear that we use osteopathic tools. I am not an osteopath. Usually MDs have to go to university on top of their regular schooling to do osteopathy, and there are also special courses for horses as well. But Tom has learned many of those tools and he's sharing them with his classes. So in osteopathy is different than what you might find of allopathic or alternative medicines. And many times osteopathy, what we're going for is the actual cause of the dysfunction, and we're going for a whole body enlightenment or whole body, I want to say cure, versus allopathic as well as alternative. Really stay away from that final cure concept. I'm just checking on Jules here, making sure she's being a very good girl and standing still. Thank you, Jules. So osteopathy, one of the tenets that we really have to think about, there's actually 4 tenets I'll be going through. The 4th one, though, is really a summation of the first 3. So the first tenet of osteopathy is the body can heal itself. It is self-maintenance. It is self-healing. And you know, that is probably one of the hardest concepts for us to consider in the West, that our body was meant to heal itself. But it was, and that's something we've forgotten in the past. And one of the things that Tom always brings into his class is that we really need to just accept everything that's out there and let it flow through us. Our spirit is intended to let all those energies flow through us, bad or good. And if we actually halt and put on the brakes against those energies, if we become fearful of those energies, that's when we allow them to stay into our bodies. We really need to just let it flow through our bodies. Another concept of osteopathy is the body is a unit, but the person is a unit of the body, soul, and spirit. Now, if you remember back in my last Craniosacral 3 video, I talked a lot about the emotional field as well as the mental field. And that still does come into play with osteopathy. In fact, it's even more into play with osteopathy. I really have to be considering all the aspects, the body, what's going on with the body, as well as the mind, the spirit, the beliefs, as well as the emotional state, in order to effect a true healing. So then the third tenet of osteopathy is, structure and function are synonymous. Otherwise, they go really hand in hand. Without the structure being as it is, the body really wouldn't function. So if you think about the liver, let's take the liver. There are 4 lobes to the horse's liver. Sorry. There are 4 lobes to the horse's liver. Why would that be? What's the function? Why does the blood have to pass through 4 lobes? Why is the right kidney a little more forward than the left? You know, you can even go as far as the chambers of the heart, which we will be delving into quite a bit today. Why are there 4? Again, structure and function. We really have to think about why, if we think about the Vena Cava hiatus, you know, why is that so important for us to look at that Vena Cava hiatus? And it's mostly because without that Vena Cava hiatus working properly, a lot of the energy, a lot of the toxins aren't going to go through the entire system, the circulatory system, as they should. Okay, so those are the 4 tenets of osteopathy that will be going, flowing, as you will, back and forth throughout this class. The next thing I really want to talk about is osteopathy, the causations of dysfunction. Okay, there are actually 6 causations of dysfunction, which again, in Western medicine, we don't really look at these very deeply. But in osteopathy, it's the rule of the blood, which means that the first thing that I'm going to look at in osteopathy is vascular, followed by neural system. You have vascular, neural, visceral. Visceral means the motility of the organs, so I'm going to be looking at the liver motility, the bladder motility. Certainly in this class we look at the heart motility and the Caol of the heart, which is basically the heart roll. Okay, so and then you get into the endocrine, followed by the lymphatic, and then finally you have the musculoskeletal system. Okay. So those are the 6 causations of dysfunctions. Now in Tom's classes, he wants to bring in some of the other systems that are just as important. But again, we're going to start out with the vascular system. Vascular blood, but he's going to add in craniosacral, followed by the neural. So those 3, I'm going to be flowing in and out throughout my treatments of those top 3 to really affect that dysfunction. Then of course I'm going to look at the endocrine system, followed by, we're going to add in the meridian system. Don't forget the meridian system. It's a very powerful system. In fact, before I even started here, I ran through a couple of her team points just to make sure that she's ready for today's session. If she can get anything out of today's session, I'd like her to have some points at least cleared a little bit. So, as well as I already have done her diaphragm releases. So, meridian system, then lymphatic, and finally the musculoskeletal. So, what's interesting about that series is musculoskeletal is really at the end. And you might wonder, what's all this with massage? Why do I feel so good with massage? Well, it is a good fix, temporary fix. It does help. Or even affecting the bone structure. It certainly does help. But in reality, you need to get down to the organs. The organs are what's pulling on the tissues, which are then pulling on the bones. So if we don't release those organs, those bones are going to be pulled right back down again. So again, the areas, causations of dysfunction in osteopathy, we have vascular, craniosacral, neural, I've been flowing through those quite a bit, visceral, endocrine, meridians, lymphatic, and finally musculoskeletal. Okay, so as we walk through this, the next step I want to talk about is the new ways we can assess the horse's dysfunction. Tom has already introduced several assessments that we can do. One, of course, being the surrogate test. There's actually 2 of those. One is the strength test, where basically you make sure that the individual is on energetically, right? So that's this, if I just run my hands up and down, I'm making sure that that CV is on. Oh, there she goes. I guess she needed that too. Although I did run it on her before we started. Okay, I want to make sure that CV is on, and the GV as well. And then somebody would put their hands on the horse, you'd ask questions, and you strength test to know where the issue is. Now the second surrogate testing is Tom's favorite, which is the pain reflex. So again, I work with the human first, and I use certain pain points to see if they have a reaction to them, and if not, then I ask them to put their hand on the horse, and then I test them in those same places, and generally if the horse is having an issue in those areas, the person is really going to feel it, and that's a really significant test because it's showing the owners exactly what the issue is. Okay, so a couple of those pain points, just running through them real quick. You have your bacteria up here, fungus is around your belly button, then you get your parasites kind of maybe down here in your lower intestine area, colon area, and then finally you have your virus. You can also use acupressure points. For instance, your pericardium 6, if you use about 4 fingers from your wrist, right in there, that's your pericardium 6. It's bilateral, so it's both sides. On the horse, I can come and pericardium 6 is actually right in front of the chestnut. So they have an easy landmark for pericardium 6. But in surrogate testing, just again to run through a couple of these, the descending colon, that's actually your large intestine 11 point, which is just anterior to your lateral epicondyle, just as your ascending colon reflex test is also your large intestine 11 acupressure point, and it's on your left arm, just anterior to your lateral epicondyle. You can also come down and test your adrenals, or I should say the horse's adrenals. So that's about maybe 3 or 4 fingers down, a little medial from the center of the kneecap. That's going to be your adrenals. Again, it's bilateral. And then just on the other side is your stomach 36. And the horse's stomach 36 is generally, it's usually in the hind end. Very powerful point there too. But again, if I want to really test these points on the human to see if the horse is going to be reactive to those points. And it's actually pretty amazing and fun how that happens. So another one of the osteopathy or tests or assessments, I guess it's not osteopathy, it's more acupressure, is a bladder meridian. So I'm going to ask Jules here to come forward. So unfortunately, I had somebody set up to help me today, but they couldn't make it. So Jewel and I are doing as best as we can here. Okay, so with the bladder meridian test, we're going to start out here right after the scapula, and that's going to be between T8 and T9, or thoracic T8 and thoracic T9, and that's going to be your lung point. So if I just kind of flinch back, you see how she's reacting just a little bit? So there might be some lung issue here. So we have lung, then we get to T9 is pericardium, T10 is heart, T11 is governing vessel, T12 is a big one, especially for this class, and that's diaphragmatic blood, which also tells me that there might be a esophageal hiatus issue. You see how she's flinching right here in the shoulder if I come in? It's not big, but there's some flinching in there, so she might have a esophageal hiatus issue. Also blood and diaphragm. So as we get farther down, I'll do another assessment with her diaphragm. So that's T12, T13, and 14. That's going to be liver. So kind of some flinching in there, so we'll check the liver out a little bit later in assessment. Then T15 is your gallbladder. You know, horses don't have a gallbladder, but the reason why we want to test the gallbladder is just for that emotional aspect. And we'll get into the emotional aspect of the gallbladder along with the 5-element theory, which is another assessment. We'll get there. Okay, so 15, then we can skip down to 17, and that's going to be, 17 is going to be her spleen, 18 is going to be your stomach, so I'm going to come up, I'm going to find that last rib, so right about here, 18 is your stomach, then between L1 and L2, that's going to be your triple heater. She's actually kind of reactive on our triple heater there. And then between 2 and 3, that's going to be your kidney. Not too reactive on kidney, although she is flinching a little bit. So she might have actually, because we check out the liver as well as the kidney, so there might be some portal issue, portal system issue. And so finally we can come up a little farther between, what is it? around 6 or 7. So right before the pelvic bone, that's going to be your small intestine. Large intestine is after that, and then bladder. So I'm reaching farther down. Is more on those bladder, and the large intestine is more on her sacrum. Okay, so that's the bladder meridian flinch test. You can also come in osteopathy, and this is the 4th test assessment that we can do, which is an osteopathy test with my intention. You know, it's interesting. I'll stop here real quick. You know, integrated equine therapies is just what I'm doing this class for. It actually stands for intention, energy, and truth. And all of that must be in the practitioner as we do this. So I have to use my intention, using the energy around us, and then truth, true to myself, true to the horse, and what she needs today. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. The stomach sits a little bit here on the right. I'm just going to flinch that. You see how she's reacting? Remember we had that T12 and the esophageal hiatus issue? Well, there's her stomach right there. We can then flinch the liver, so the dorsal lobe and ventral lobe right about here. Yeah, she's a little reactive with there too. Again, I can come into the spleen over here. I think spleen, so she was a bit reactive on the spleen as well. Okay, thank you, sweetheart. Okay, so Tom also introduces, like I mentioned before, the 5-element theory. And what's interesting about the 5-element theory, it takes in the emotional aspect of the horse and connects that with the organs. So I'm going to hold up my hand and make sure that she understands what's going on here, because I'm going to be placing my hand directly on her ting point right here, but I'm going to be asking questions, or basically rotating between the certain elements to check out where she might have an issue. Okay? So I'm going to just grab this, make sure she doesn't step on this. It's okay, girl. Okay, so the 5-element theory. We're going to start out with earth. We're going to start with earth. So earth is basically your stomach. It's associated with your stomach and your spleen. Okay, so your stomach and your spleen, which earth is about how you digest life. What are you taking into life? It can mean self-confidence as well as lack of self-confidence. So again, earth is the center of the 5-element circle. Air. Air is represented by lung and your large intestine. It's basically your freedom of movement. It also holds great grief. And I think we've been through that in a couple other classes too, that the lung holds great grief, and it's certainly something that we address in this class again. So we have air, earth, air, fire. So fire is at the bottom of this quintet. So we have fire, which is basically associated with the heart and the small intestine. Fire, passion, joy, love, compassion, grief, anger, that's all in the heart, okay? So that's fire. So again, we have earth, air, fire. Let's go to water. Water is represented by the kidney and the bladder. Now we've already spoken about the kidney in prior classes. Kidney brings about a lot of fear. Okay, but water generally stands for how you flow through life, what may be stopping you. Okay, so that's water. And then finally, we're going to get to wood. Remember I talked about gallbladder a little bit ago? Well, wood brings the gallbladder and the liver in, and it's generally associated with deep-seated anger. But it can also bring new life. It's how your body metabolizes all those chemicals and toxins or whatever. But what brings you new life, new beginnings, that would be associated with wood. So with osteopathy, we want to consider all those emotions and beliefs. These could be emotions and beliefs from prior lives, current lives, whatever your belief is. It certainly could be affecting this horse as well. And I have to be very careful when I ask these questions that I'm not imposing my own beliefs on her. Okay, so we went through the 5-element theories. Are you ready for this? Okay. I'm sorry, poor girl, I'm screaming in her ears. Okay, so I'm going to lay my hand very gently here, and now I'm just going to ask, those 5 elements: earth, air, fire. And I'm going to feel if there's a weight, a tiny little weight. Okay, so she's actually showing me a little bit of wood. Yeah, so wood and fire. So my hand is sinking down and it's sinking a little bit to the left. So wood and fire. I'm going to ask again if I need to go to the right, which is air. No. Okay, so really weight it down there. And so what's interesting with that, thank you, sweetheart. What's interesting with that is, remember we did the flinch test and she came up positive with liver. So, you know, if I was back in craniosacral 3, I'd definitely be looking at that portal system. But unfortunately, sweetie, we're doing blood and nerves today. So she'll hang in there and I'll come back to her another day and get the liver. But we may be able to clear the blood, at least the vena cava that comes through her liver. I will certainly try to get to that today. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bit of handy dandy water here. This is just Rescue Remedy from Bach, and then I mixed in a bit of peppermint and digest from the essential oils Young Living. Let her smell it. She's not so sure she likes that smell. She may not need the digest. Okay, so I'm going to spray it on her heart area here. And when I come into the heart, that's the first thing I want to do. I want to come into it with compassion. But then I also want to actually feel the structure. So again, structure and function are coming hand in hand. I'm actually going to take my rope here. Long lead rope for whatever reason today. So I'm going to try to angle her a little bit to the side. So you can see this. Okay. So let's just go ahead and drape that over here. Okay. Now I'm going to put one hand, my right hand is going, or most caudal hand is going to come right here next to her elbow, and then I'm going to come, the other one is on her chest. So what I'm doing here, I'm just slowly, and I'm not pressing hard, I'm not using a lot of weight. I'm just gently going into her heart. Taking an elevator ride down until I feel the weight of her heart. Okay, now I need to go a little bit lower. I was too high. Okay, she's backing up because she knows what I'm doing. And this can be uncomfortable for anybody. So the heart sits 60% to the left side of the medial line of the horse. There it is. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to come in with a little bit of light. So we're going to come up a little bit closer, sweetie. Just surround that area of the heart with light. Nice and compassionate. But now I'm going to sneak into the right atrium. This can be uncomfortable. Horses aren't used to this. She's backing up. She's not sure about this. Come on. So the right atrium is the most dorsal cranial aspect of the heart. From the right atrium, it goes down into the right ventricle, through the tricuspid valve, so from the tricuspid valve, it goes through the right ventricle, so I'm feeling up into that right ventricle. Yep. So actually there's a bit of an issue what I'm feeling right now between right before it goes in the pulmonary vein in her right ventricle, the semilunar valve, pulmonary valve. So when you get into the heart at this point in time, I'm just using craniosacral and following it along. There we go. There we go. Okay. So now I am not going to really go into the pulmonary vein and artery at this time. That's better done actually when we go and move the lung itself. So now I'm going to come down. I'm going to go into the left atrium, which is the most dorsal caudal part of the heart. Okay, then through the bicuspid or atrial ventricular valve. Another little hiccup. Following that through, stuck tissue. And you know, the way I know that is I've just felt this in several different horses. And I might want to leave this. This is kind of a big issue for her. So it's definitely in that left ventricle, more towards the center, or I'm forgetting the word, hold on, here we go. There we go. Okay, she's blinking, which generally means I'm in an area she's been a little bit concerned about. Okay. So basically she kicked my hands out of that area. And how I know that is because I felt a disengagement with my hands, okay? So we're just going to bypass that. I'm just checking out her heart noise right now. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to ask her, I'm going to go into her pericardium. First thing I'm going to do with her pericardium is I'm going to feel for that visceral layer, which is the first layer of her pericardium, see if it's stuck anywhere. Okay, it is a little stuck near the dorsal side of the heart. So I'm just going to sit here, I'm just going to rock it gently back and forth a little bit, see if I can get a little bit of movement. See how stuck it is. Yeah. So it's actually up against the lung. So maybe the pleural. There we go. It's loosening up a bit. There it is. Nice job. Move her back a little bit. Good girl. Okay. So one thing you have to know about the pericardium is there are two layers to it. The first being the visceral layer, and then the second being the parietal layer. Now remember the parietal layer because of the parietal bones, right? So the parietal layer. And I don't want to also forget about that sternopericardium ligament, which is basically, I want to say between the second and fourth, or the third and fourth sternal notch to the right. It attaches on the right side. Because I'm thinking about her pericardium, I'm also bringing in that sternopericardial ligament, and she likes that. I'm going to loosen up, make sure I'm grounded. There it is. Okay. Good. Okay, so I'm feeling a lot of movement to the left. kind of a bit of a rock, settling. There we go. Okay, so basically her heart just settled a bit more to the left, which is good. Kind of settled down a little bit. I felt a thump in my right hand, just felt another nice little thump. Different than a heartbeat, they're larger than a heartbeat. And now an overall relaxing. Good girl. Okay, so while I'm here, I'm going to come into the thymus. That's the next aspect of the heart we're going to look at. Now, the thymus is like a butterfly. In the craniosacral rhythm, it opens and closes. It's right around the pericardial, or excuse me, it's right around the sternal notches of 2 to 4. So if I put my hands kind of right in the middle there, and I'm just going to ask it to come to my hands. It's usually pretty round and big. There it is. So I also feel like it's a bunch of little fish eggs. Just not sure about it. So I'm going to follow that movement around a little bit. Flexion, extension, flexion. Upper heart just dropped again. Actually, it needs a little bit more in the flexion, so I'm going to encourage it to flex a little bit more. Her heart keeps thumping. There we go. Nice job. Okay. So now the next big thing that we're going to work on is a heart Caol. Now the heart Caol is the energetic motion of the heart. It's different than the heartbeat. It's different than your craniosacral rhythm. It runs about 6 to 10 cycles a minute. And basically, one of the big things we have to keep in mind, there's a book out there called From Chaos to Coherence by Doc Childre and Brian Cryer. And basically it's for the Heart Math Institute, which is a nonprofit institute which basically looks into recording the movements of the heart. And one of the big things that they found out was, well, the gut. Okay, so first we can talk about the intestines. There's over 100 million neurons in your intestines, which is more than your spinal cord, okay? But your heart also has a complex set of neurons too that we're just learning about. And that's what the heart Caol comes into play. There is over 60 times more electrically and 5,000 times more magnetically energy in your heart than there is in your brain. So one thing that from Chaos to Coherence talks about is the, there we go, girl. One of the things that they talk about is, you know, our mind is just an archive. It's just our thoughts. That's it. It's an archive. Versus our heart and our gut is our emotions. It's what's driving us. It's what gives us that movement, the momentum forward. Okay, so what I'm doing right now, if you can see, she kind of released a little bit there. I'm actually thinking about the entire heart roll right now, or that Caol, remember? So if I'm going to leave my hands off for a second, the heart kind of rocks back and forth like this. That's its motility. That's the Caol. Okay, when it comes more cranially like this, then that's basically the arterial flow out of the heart. And then when it comes this way, that's the venous. Now, when it comes to the cranial movement or the arterial movement, that's actually neurologically and electromagnetically energizing all those arteries and capillaries to basically push the blood away from the heart, and vice versa for the veins. So it's neurologically and electromagnetically bringing the blood back to the heart. Again, remember those figures I just gave you. 60 times more electrically and 5,000 times more magnetically than the heart. Excuse me, than the brain. than the brain. Okay, so I'm going to come in here to her heart again, and this time my intention is going to be picking up that Caol. And I also want to pick up the greater vessels now, so that's going to be the aorta. It's going to be the vena cava, both the cranial vena cava as well as the caudal vena cava. I can bring in the aorta arch. There we go, good girl. I can bring in a little bit more. I'm trying to think about the bicarotid artery as well. Might as well go for it all, right? That's not one of the major vessels. And I'm just, so her movement is not very big. It's rather tight. So energetically, again, we're using that intention, energy, and truth. And I'm going to ask for the movement to grow larger. Look at her eyes. Very soft, blinking. Okay, so we're in venal move right now. I'm going to hold it back just a little bit. Okay, now we're going to come forward into arterial flow. It's dropping just a little bit more. And we're going to go more caudally or venous. Come on, girl. You sign up for this. Okay, pick that up again. Venous. Now I'm feeling a lot of movement under my hands right now, which is probably why she walked off. This was probably more than she bargained for. She thought she'd just be standing here listening to me talk. No, I did tell her beforehand. There we go. So basically her arterial and venous has both increased quite a bit. So I'm pleased with that. She's still a little bit tight on the arterial flow, which basically tells me that she's probably having a lot of trouble with her forend. Probably she's not reaching her full stride out as much as she could because she's really blocked in here. So after I run the Caol, there's a couple different ways I can go in treatment. I can either come up the neck and work on her head. So, if I come just here, ouch, yeah, see, so she needs her head to be worked on. Okay, and usually you can go to craniosacral on this right away, but if you actually do the blood first, that's going to make it a bunch easier. I can also do her thoracic area here, again working on the blood, and I'm always going to want to start with the vein first, the veins first, and that's because I want to make sure that everything can clear out before I push more blood in. Okay, so I can come in here, or I can come more back to her abdominal area. I think what I'm going to do is I'm first going to go, let's go into her subclavian here. So again, I pick up that venous flow, may focus on that, try to get the rhythm in. So in our cranial, which is the arterial. And I'm going to pick up the subclavian artery, subclavian vein. Just put a tiny bit of pressure on it with my intention. And when I go vein, I'm just going to bring in a little bit more. Look at those eyes. Not quite time yet, I'm just building up, so we're back to arterial flow and venous. There we go, step, step, step. So I'm using her step, especially her left forehind, to help me move that blood through. Okay, so that's her subclavian. Now I'm going to see if I got it all. I think I got it more towards the middle here. No, it's still kind of tight in there. Okay, so we're going to try this one more time. It can take up to 3 or 4 times right now. I am just a student, so I'm learning how to do this. Okay, so we're cranial again, so that's arterial, and now that's Vena. See, she's picking up her head going like, whoa, what's all this about? Now cranial, so I'm keeping that pressure on, and it's really not that much pressure, but just so there's tension. And we're going to do it one more time here. I'm going to make her move. In the next cycle, she's getting ready. Here we go. Okay, what do you think of that? Can you let it out? She's certainly not fighting this. Okay, let's move her a little over here, make sure that we're in the camera sight. Okay, so now if she was having a lot of, the subclavian is great for any kind of sternal issues or breast issues. But we also want to think about a couple other veins. We can go to the cranial circumflex, which basically comes around the humerus and the scapula, and that's going to help any kind of forward movement. So let's just test that one out. And this is bilateral, by the way. I know that I'm working on just one side. You'd want to do both sides. So yeah, this is kind of step 2. So again, this is her cranial circumflex. So there's tension. Now my right hand is not very heavy in this movement. It's the driver. I'm basically following the movement of her Caol very lightly. Okay, girl, you have to move here. A little embarrassed, so she's moving her head away. I know she has a bit of a mess here, but we'll clean that up later. Okay, she's very willing. That's a good sign. Now, usually I would hope that she would yawn. I think she's holding a lot back just because she's surrounded by all of her friends right now. I can come into her mouth, she knows what's coming, and try to open her up a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm just gently asking. That hard palate to open up a bit. Okay. So the other vein I can think about right here is also the internal thoracic, which again helps the sternal area. So I want to, when I'm coming to the heart, I'm actually having pressure, any kind of tension I have is back towards the heart, because that's where the way the vein, the blood is moving back towards the heart, okay? I don't know if you could tell that from the video or not. So I'm going to come up here and my attention is on the deep thoracic. So I'm going to pick up, oh, her heart just thumped again. So I'm going to pick up her Caol again. There we go. Yeah, okay. Come down a little bit lower here. Now, with the veins, I could also try getting the cephalic vein, which is basically kind of the other side of the external jugular vein. Or I should say the ventral aspect. Yeah, here we go. So I may need to come back here where that cephalic vein and jugular vein basically divide and hit this spot first. Let's spray some water on it. So I have something to grab. And then we might go up her jugular vein. Okay, here we go, girl. So my intention is really to go in to, again, where her jugular vein and cephalic vein branch off from each other. There it is. Backing up. Probably not the best surface to be doing this on, and I understand that, so I'll be careful. One of the reasons I had to do it is it's rather windy outside. But she's being a good girl. So I won't try to push her too hard, just enough so you guys get the idea of what I'm doing. But now if I come back here just to check my work here, or check our work, I can't dismay that she's part of this. Yeah, I mean, look how much nicer that is. She's still a little rough right in here. So let's see if we can get this aspect. She's getting ready for it. She's going to try to get ahead of me. Yeah? Doing okay? So now, if you just look at her face, you know that she's thinking about something right now. She's wondering about, well, couldn't this feel a little bit better? Do I want this? Do I want to have this change? And that's something that we have to think about when we are working with horses and with people, is many times they may not want to let go of what's going on. So we have to be prepared to walk away. It's been disheartening when I've had to do that myself, but I also understand, if the spirit doesn't want to change, there's not much I can do about it. And again, actually it brings back second aspect of, or second tenet of osteopathy, that the body is self-maintaining, self-healing. It's just our belief, or should I say, it's just our belief and our emotion, right? Those ESL points, belief and emotion, that stops us from that. Okay, so I'm going to come back in here again. We're going to feel. So I'm checking the Caol and just kind of putting a little tension on some places, seeing if it needs to be released, and actually it's doing pretty well. So if I come up on her jugular, unfortunately blood work is very slow. It's very slow and it's bit by bit. So for jugular vein, basically if I can think of what I'm doing here, that's going to help release a bunch of these cranial issues first before I get into cranial sacral. So she's ready to rock and roll right now, so hold on. So we're going to go find the vein, find the Caol, the venous movement here. Yep. So it's interesting, it's right here at C5. Again, very, very common. She's not fighting too hard to come back, so that's good. So I'm going to come into that area again. Again, pull tension towards the heart. Think about only the vein, I'm not thinking about artery.
looks like she's about to blow it out, but not so sure she wants to yet. Okay, so real quick, if I can bring her forward just a little bit. So the jugular vein runs off here. You have it comes off of the subclavian vein. So the subclavian is down here. You have the cephalic, then you have the the external jugular. I can also, when the vena cava, cranial vena cava first comes off the heart, it breaks through the costa cervical, which the costa cervical comes up and basically feeds the scapula or dorsal scapular, as well as the superior intercostal veins and the deep cervical veins. The deep cervicals are optional to do, although I have found that if I'm doing a lot of head work, I'll want to get those cervicals. Of course, then you have the next branch down from the subclavian is going to be your vertebral, which the veins and artery run through the vertebral foramen. That's also something that I really would like to do. But then you have the jugular. The jugular comes up here, it breaks off into the sublingual, which then comes up under the facial. That's one of the places you can take a pulse on a horse, as well as up here where you have the transverse. I've had a lot of issues lately where I've had to work on the sinuses, the venous sinuses, venal sinuses. But the transverse comes right up here. It's another place you can take a pulse on the horse. But then you have the transverse, you have the deep, and then you have the buccal sinuses here. Very, very important. And they actually come off the maxillary vein. Come a little farther up here, you're going to have the occipital vein, which is a combination of the external jugular combining up with it's anastomosis. Forgive me, I can't pronounce that word. It's a combination of the vertebral vein with the jugular. So that's all something I may want to get. So let's just try to clear this up a little bit more, and then we'll jump into some other issues. Again, blood work takes time. Okay, so that's okay. So I started up a little high. It looks like she has some issues at 4 as well, or C4. You know, and before I do any work on the bones, I will definitely want to clear the blood first. There we go. She will start moving back for me. She's moving forward. Some more. There we go. So my issue at that point was I was just not ahead of her, so I didn't affect her as much. So that's something that I always want to be careful of, or I want to be aware of. When they start backing up quickly, that means I need to start really double timing her Caol, basically. Good girl, thank you. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the vena cava, the vena cava hiatus. So we all know this is her arterial, or her aorta. Her aorta comes up here through the aortic arch and comes back here. It actually comes through the diaphragm for the aorta hiatus, somewhere around here. And she really wants that. Look at her. She really wants me to do that, but I can't do that, sweetie, until I get the vena cava hiatus and clear the other side. So I'm going to ask her to come around. Okay, so the vena cava hiatus, we have the diaphragm. Diaphragm comes right up along here. Vena cava hiatus. The vena cava hiatus is somewhere in here. But you know what? I'm sorry. I just remembered that she was having some lung trouble, So we might want to get that before. And she's obviously very excited about that. With the lung, just real quickly, I'll show you, instead of going into the pulmonary and the pulmonary artery and vein, I can actually do the lungs first. So I'll get the first, there are actually 5 lobes of lung. On the left side, there are 3 lobes here. There are 3 lobes. And the first lobe is approximately right here. If I just do an osteopathic intent here, flinch test, not much. If I get her accessory lobe, it's right about here. Not bad. But look at that lateral lobe. Not good. Lots of flinching there. But we're going to go for this cranial lobe first. Oh, she knows what's going on. Not sure if she wants this, huh? No. Okay. We're going to switch sides here, baby. Note to self, don't have long lead ropes when you're doing this work. This is a new lead rope. Okay, so again, with my intention, I'm going to come into this cranial lobe. I want to clear the cranial as well as accessory before I go back to the caudal lobe. I'm going to come into it. Now I'm going to actually tension it up cranially. And she's going to move back. She's doing a nice job of. She's not sure. Okay, baby, here we go. So I'm going to want to hold on to that. So what that was I was basically pushing her cranial lobe forward. Okay, I'm pushing it forward. She started going backwards. Okay, and that's actually helping throw the motility in by the landing of her right front foot. Okay, so if I come back in here again, now if I feel a lung, when I feel lungs, it's kind of spongy, a little dry, like you're picking up a half-wet, dry sponge on your kitchen sink. Lungs also carry a lot of grief, so I want to make sure that we talk to her about this. We have a story to tell, sweetie. And we can't go that way, we have to go this way. So you notice how she's circling around me. She's got some grief going on here. So you want to tell me your story? Let me circle around again. You're a beautiful pony. You deserve to be on the camera. Okay? So again, I'm just going to come in here nice and soft. There's a story here. I'm going to actually come up to her ESL point. Is it a belief or is it emotion? You know, I'm getting a stronger on her right side, which I believe is belief. So I'm connecting these two. Your story, sweetie. Yeah. You can show me any way, colors. You want to show me a picture? Grass. Okay, I saw grass. Yeah. Sometimes they just need somebody to listen to them. We don't take a lot of time to listen to ourselves as well as our animals. There we go, girl. So I think I'm going to come around here and actually come to her other side first. I know that we started with that right side, but her left side I'm just sensing has a little bit more into it. So again, come into the lung. Nice and deep. Feel the motility of it. Motility is kind of like a little bit of a half circle, at least that's how I feel it. It's a half circle kind of going cranially. Yep. So it's just not completing that half circle, so I'm going to ask it to really complete that circle. Or half circle, excuse me. It's not a full 360. So again, light tension, she's moving. I'm not really pushing that hard. And a girl. So I stopped. One of the reasons I stopped, you may not be able to see me, I'm over here. I stopped because she's basically gone into a somatic emotional release. I felt just a deep, like the floor basically fall out from underneath her. And if I look at her eyes, right now, there we go, good girl, good girl. She is definitely processing something. And you know, there's a lot of things where I've heard that you just need to stop treating a horse when they get that look in their eye like they're processing something. And I would agree with that, but I also, from the craniosacral aspect of knowing somatic emotional release, I just need to open my own presence up. I don't have to remove my hands. I just have to be here for her. So again, looking at her eyes, following my hand around. Yeah, that's a good girl. Good girl. Okay, girl. Now, I want you to think about this issue. Now, I'm going to come back and work on you later this week, but we're going to move on, okay, sweetie? I'll have to come back later this week and work on you again. Okay? Yeah. This may take some time to work through, so I want her to let her know that I will be here this week to help her a little bit more with this issue. Okay? So, of course, I'd want to go to her caudal lobe as well. She's getting ready for this. But unfortunately, due to time, I think I'm going to skip this. I did tell her that I'd come back to her. What I'd like to do is show you a Vena Cava hiatus release. Now the best way to do it is basically to have one hand on this side of her heart, so I'm feeling the Caol, and the other side approximately where her Vena Cava hiatus is. And then bending her towards the right when I feel that venous flow. This takes about 3 to 4 efforts of getting the Vena Cava clear. So I'm going to come in here, put a little more tension on the rope, make sure she bends. Pick up the Caol, so it's arterial. Vein, I'm going to think into that Vena Cava hiatus, a little bit lower. She's getting ready. Okay, so I'm going to try that one more time this way. Actually, I'm going to intentionally go into that the vena cava hiatus first. So the vena cava hiatus is where the vena cava exits through the diaphragm to the heart. If this is not caught, you get a lot of back end troubles, the portal system issues, urinary issues. It's really a big deal. And I forgot to show one of the assessments for this. It's your basic diaphragm test, right? So if the diaphragm's in spasm, you better believe that vena cava hiatus is in spasm. So I come in here, not bad, but she does have an issue more on the left side than her right side. And all I did was basically push down and in towards the vertebrae. And that's somewhere that you basically are doing that around like L2 to L5 to get the cruae of the diaphragm, that test. Okay, sorry, sweetie. So again, put some nice water on here, just so I have some grip. Okay, I'm taking an elevator ride down, down, down into her vena cava hiatus, and it's a little bit lower. See if I can reach over. There it is. Okay, now I'm going to pick up the heart Caol, so arterial flow, venous, arterial, venous. Now, the other way we can do this, if you're not being successful, and I don't think I'm being too successful with this here, and she may not need it as much as some of the other areas. Oh, okay, she's being difficult. Here we go. Okay, good. Stand still. Okay. Come over this way. Come on. Over this way. This way. Okay, let me get her lined up for the camera here. Okay, so here I'm going to come up and feel the heart Caol with my right hand, and then I'm going to come over to her vena cava hiatus here. Elevator right down. It's in venal flow, so I'm pushing the blood into the heart and arterial. Venal. Arterial. She's ready to move here, so I'm going. She's stepping ahead of me. So, I mean, that's the basic idea of what you want to do. And you probably will take a couple times. You're just going to find that venal flow and just start nudging it in. So arterial. Okay. See how she perked up when I did that? Arterial. Vein. So if I hold the tension right there. Okay. In that episode, she was actually running away from me because I had got onto her vena cava, and basically I need to double time it and get ahead of her steps. I found this a lot with the horses I've been working with. I mean, they just start booking it back when you really want to get this vena cava hiatus. And I don't really know the reason why. I mean, look at this. I think It is purposeful to do this. Unfortunately, in the ground, I'm not comfortable using this area, but unfortunately outside wasn't an option today. But I think we did get a little bit more movement here. If I try to bring tension, it's a lot less. Okay. So it's okay, baby girl. So now the other aspect that we can look at today is also the arterial hiatus, but I think I'll get that another day. It's basically the same concept when you work on arteries. You're going to move it away from the heart. So the arterial hiatus would be right around here. So as the aorta comes up around here, it's going to exit right around maybe T18, L1, L2. So right around this area, and I pick up the Caol again, and I would really just ask that blood to move back towards her rear end. Very important. So two of the other aspects of this class that I wanted to briefly touch upon as much as we could, poor girl, is going to be the vagus nerve and the phrenic nerve and the brachial plexus. Nerves are not a fun thing to do. You can do the rock and glide with cranial sacral. That's perfectly acceptable, but oftentimes that can cause just as much pain. So if I start with the vagus nerve actually travels up in the vagosympathetic trunk, which is in the carotid sheath that is shared by both the common carotid and the external jugular. So right along this crease here. And the vagosympathetic trunk is actually the parasympathetic vagus nerve as well as the sympathetic nerves. They are two separate nerves, even though they call it a trunk. The vagus nerve, I can catch it right coming out of C1, C2. That's probably the easiest motility of it. The vagus nerve comes through the carotid sheath and then separates away where the esophagus breaks off and then comes into the stomach. So remember when we did the flinch test on T12 and she came up pretty flinchy on T12? That's a great indication that she has esophageal hiatus, which funny thing, when people have esophageal hiatuses are extremely common, but also very painful to horses. So when that vagus nerve gets caught, or a lot of times when it goes through the diaphragm, because the diaphragm is in spasm, so it's going to create a spasm in the nerve that's innervating the stomach, which is a parasympathetic nerve, the vagus nerve, right? And from there, that can cause all sorts of issues. It's going to cause less mucus in the stomach. It's going to cause more acid to be released. I think it's ACL acid. I could be wrong about that. Which also then affects downstream. That's going to affect the large and small colon as well. They're going to be more acidic versus alkaline. So a whole host of issues can come about because of the vagus nerve. So it is very important. And right now I'm sending a bunch of energy right down to esophageal hiatus just to kind of relax. Remember how we said that when we did the diaphragm test around I said T18 to like L3, L4. Really what's going on, I said she was more reactive to her left. Well, that means that she has a left torsion of that esophageal hiatus. And what that means is when I do finally get to moving her, I don't know if I'll get to that today, when I do finally get to move her, I'll be going down, I'll be taking an elevator down to her esophageal hiatus to where the vagus nerve comes in as well. There it is. I'm already there. She knows it. She wants this. I get down there and I'm going to want to actually move her counterclockwise. So I'm going to energetically, with intention, put my hands around the esophagus, and basically move it counterclockwise. And she really had a reaction on both sides, so I might also try it both ways. And it's kind of like when I work on craniosacral and I'm working on the dural tube. And I actually energetically imagine holding that dural tube and rocking, gliding as I would in craniosacral therapy. So same kind of concept of what I'm doing here. I want to put my intention down there and just start releasing it. But first let's talk about the vagus nerve. So like I said, the vagus nerve comes out around, well, the best place to catch it, I should say, is right about C1, C2. It's going to come down here, follow the trachea, then follow the esophagus into the heart, or excuse me, to the stomach. Okay, so the vagus nerve, every nerve has a longitudinal longitudinal movement to it. So the vagus nerve, okay, already I've got it. It's rather big. It has its own sort of energy to it. I kind of consider it like a cinnamon or spicy energy to it. So she knows what's going on here. So I'm first going to pull it out. See, look at her eyes. Energetically grabbing it, pulling it out of that sleeve, the dural sleeve. Now this is a common look that I get from horses when I'm working on the vein. It's like, oh God, here it goes. It's going to hurt. And I could do craniosacral, but doing the nudge is probably a little bit easier. Although I'm kind of nervous about the nudge on this flooring. So she's moving her head away from me. I'm gliding it. There we go. Let's do this way. So again, I'm following the craniosacral movement and just rocking, gliding this nerve. I'm going to keep my router hand, which is my left hand, and just feeling that movement. And my right hand is just going to go through and move down each segment that gets stuck. Right now it's stuck right around T3, T4, excuse me, C3, C4. There we go. You really only need the tips of your fingers for this. The nerves come out at about a 30-degree angle. So again, you see how I'm kind of just rocking and gliding it down. Oh, right, that spot right here. Okay, so I know that when I come back and work on her, I'll want to get this area, which probably is around T5, T6. You know, another good place for T6, excuse me, C6. I'm on the cervicals. Another good place for the cervicals is I want to go back and I'm going to check that circumflex vein because that's going to help free up the C6 or C7, C6, and T1. So I'm going to want to look at that area and then follow it all the way through, follow the path of the vagus nerve through. I can also come down to the brachial plexus, and for the brachial plexus, which is a large group of nerves right here, it's very painful for horses because, and for humans too, but it's primarily because blood is wrapping around those nerves. So I definitely want to make sure that all the blood is cleared at the brachial plexus before I go there. So for the brachial plexus, I'm going to come down and I'm going to use, here we go. So I'm going to use a vein right here, a nerve right off of 2 and 3. And I'm come down to C5 and just feel where it might be getting stuck using rock and glide. So we're in flexion, extension, flexion. So right here, it's a little stuck. So I'd want to work this area of the brachial plexus. Yep. So I got a little bit of a release out of her. I think there's a lot more that we can do in this area for the brachial plexus. This is a lot of issues with forehand as well as shoulder. It's not. There we go. Yeah, it's about time you did something. Huh. Yeah. You're welcome. I'm trying. So her eyes just went back to that aorta hiatus again. So we got a lot to do before I can get there. You know that, right? Okay. So the phrenic nerve, real quick. The phrenic nerve is a real culprit of the diaphragm issues. So the phrenic nerve comes out around C5. It travels usually subscapular to the diaphragm and basically innervates that diaphragm. But you notice how close, if I come through here and it comes below the scapula, you notice how close that gets to the heart. And because the heart is so electromagnetic, it's gonna, if there's any issue with that path of the phrenic nerve, that heart is going to grab it, and basically every time the heart beats, it's going to spasm the diaphragm because it's holding on to that phrenic nerve. Okay, so I would take it up at C5, and I would basically, again, it's that whole rock and glide movement. Now I would follow the path underneath the scapula. I could do that. I'd want to do that so that I get it away from the heart. But I don't want to forget there's the other path of this nerve that goes directly under the scapula. So I've caught a good moment here for her. Good. Yep. She's not sure she wants to deal with that. It's okay, baby girl. You're doing good. You're doing good. It's okay. You're doing good. It's okay. Okay, so the phrenic nerve comes up, comes under the scapula, but there's also another part that comes underneath the scapula, which is a part we want to concern ourselves with. And attached to the diaphragm. You can also come up to the more dorsal aspect of the diaphragm muscle as well and catch that area. That's also another important area to follow as we work on the vagus nerve. Okay. So it looks like we do have just a little bit more time. I can go ahead and try for a little bit of this phrenic nerve, seeing that it's a bit of an issue with her. Again, because of the footing, I'm not going to want to push her too hard. I'll have to save that for another video. I should say push. When people see Tom Mays or somebody who he teaches or myself do the nudge, They think we're actually pushing hard. And in truth, it's just I'm grabbing on to that tissue. And yes, there is a little bit of nudging going on, but it's a nudge. It's not a full-blown push. Because that energy, that intention is grabbing onto those tissues and basically moving the horse. Whether it's pain response or it could just be, hey, this is my tissue, it's in a knot and you're pushing it that way, I'm gonna go that way. Okay, so, you know, we think that we're hurting the horses when we do this. We're not hurting the horses, we're helping them. There is some aspect of pain, unfortunately, with all body work there is. It's like you go to a masseuse and you know it's good, a deep massage, because you're in a little bit of pain afterwards. But we don't want our horses to be in a lot of pain. I know, I don't want them in a lot of pain either. But that's the point of the nudge. That's why you do the nudge, because it gets it out and over with right away. Okay, and you always want to communicate what you're doing. So if I come to her and I just tell her I'm going to try to release your phrenic nerve from right around C6, C7, oh, she doesn't like that, and T1. Yeah. Oh, she's telling me a story. Okay. So she's had this issue for a while. Previous owner. Okay. Nothing extremely bad happened. Oh, it was her fault. Okay. So maybe she tripped in the field or... Yeah, okay. So she tripped. Basically caused injury to this area. Not uncommon. Okay, so again, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to pick up the phrenic nerve right around C5, 30-degree angle. There it is. You want to get rid of this? Oh, she's got a really worried look on her face. Okay. There we go. Wow, she really wants to plow forward on that, doesn't she? Okay. So, you know, I think we've come to the end of my power supply on my camera. So I'll let it go at this. I hope I've shown some of the techniques. Obviously, after I do the phrenic nerve, I'm going to want to go to that esophageal hiatus and really rock and roll that puppy. Meaning I'm going to want to go in and follow the torsion and basically ask, and a lot of this is asking, ask that esophageal hiatus to let go. And I think you'd see a lot of really good improvement in her abilities. She's already a great horse. So I know that by doing a little additional work, we can help her feel a lot better. So once again,
This is Jenny Crane. This is my video for for Osteopathy 1 for the Tom Mays class, Integrated Equine Therapies. Look for me at jennycrane.com, or you can also find me at facilitatedhealing.net. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.